Right, Horizon scandal. Now, this is a dreadful story. We're all familiar with it now that the ITV are doing a drama series on it, Mr. Bates versus the Post Office. But this is essentially at least 700 postmasters who were prosecuted over allegations of fraud and theft and false accounting. Hundreds bankrupted and jailed. 4 even took their own lives. This went on for a long time, and those who are running the Post Office with this dodgy software and actually wantonly allowed these people to have their lives ruined is just utterly disgusting. But what transpires today is now the Post Office themselves are under criminal investigation over the wrongful prosecution of hundreds of sub-postmasters. So tell us about that, how the police are now going to be investigating the Post Office.
Certainly. So the story goes back to 2005 and stretches through to 2019 when this Horizon IT software was being used by sub-postmasters and mistresses. And of course, what it actually did, this faulty software, was show gaps in people's accounts, missing money. And the Post Office got all over this and thought, right, these people are dishonest, they're stealing the Post Office's money, and investigations were launched, and many people were incorrectly arrested, charged, taken to court and convicted. And some of them received jail terms, including Alan Bates, who is the real-life person upon whom this ITV drama has been based. Now, Horizon IT was developed by a major corporation, so there are going to be questions and potential legal actions against that corporation as well. But from the policing point of view, in 2020, the Met Police launched an investigation into allegations of perjury and perverting the course of justice by the Post Office in regards to have people given false evidence to secure these convictions of innocent postmasters and mistresses. That's the question. That's what they're investigating. Was there a larger conspiracy to pervert the course of justice by putting false evidence in front of courts? So that's the Met investigation launched in 2020. Now you might think 4 years later, what's been done? Only 2 people have been interviewed under caution. There have been no arrests made. So it might be reasonable to think that this is not the Met Police's top priority, or hasn't been since 2020. However, yesterday, no doubt bowing to the pressure that has been brought by this very widely watched ITV drama that has appalled millions of people, the Met have launched a second investigation into what they're calling broadly fraud, which may relate to the clawing back of monies from postmasters and postmistresses. So, was any of that money that was clawed back from these people when it really shouldn't have been because they didn't steal it in the first place, has that been misappropriated?
Gosh.
Was there any illegality about retrieving that money?
It's just absolutely shocking. I mean, on one hand, you might think, well, you know, they launched this new software and suddenly think, oh, gosh, we're discovering all of these people are really dodgy because we've got this new software and it's finding out that postmasters and mistresses have been pocketing cash. We just never saw this before. But did no one stop to think, well, hold on, this seems like a vast number of people saying that this software is not working. And what is so tragic is, you know, even if some of these people, well, all of them deserve compensation, one hopes that all of them will get compensation, even if they do, you've had people who were put in jail, who were bankrupted, who took their own lives, who have actually lived through absolute hell, and no compensation is ever going to repay that, is it?
When it comes to crime and punishment, giving it a broad title, and when it comes to the criminal justice system, police, whatever it may be, there can surely be nothing worse than being falsely accused and then convicted of a crime you simply did not commit.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's utterly terrifying, in fact, that it went on this scale. We had some breaking news a bit earlier today, which is that a 16-year-old boy has been charged with murder after that other 16-year-old, Harry Pitman, was stabbed to death on New Year's Eve on London's Primrose Hill. He, of course, went there to watch the fireworks with his mates. We know there was some sort of altercation. He ended up losing his life around midnight. He didn't even see the ringing in of the new year. But it's raised a lot of questions. First of all, we can't talk a lot around this. We can't name the boy who's charged with murder because he is a minor. We can't talk a lot around or speculate what may have happened or motivations because it's an active investigation. But what we can do is talk about the state of the world today when you've got a 16-year-old stabbing another 16-year-old, something which in decades past would have been a massive news story because it would have been so uncommon, a child murdering another child. And yet, in 2024, it sadly isn't a surprise at all.
I went onto social media on New Year's Day and expressed my views about the state of the nation because the media hadn't picked this story up. It was not making the television news on New Year's Day, the murder of a 16-year-old, and I put out a tweet or an X to the effect of, have we become so desensitised to child murder that it's now not receiving any coverage? It did gain traction the following day and has become a very large story, as it deserves to be. This utter, abominable, heartbreaking tragedy. The 21st teenager in London to lose his life last year. A really ghastly case. And in recent years, I've spent a lot of time with people who have lost a child to murder, including one astonishing woman by the name of Tracy Hanson, who lost her son Josh to knife crime. And I've spent a lot of time with Tracy going through the capture of the man that was wanted for that crime. He'd fled the country and it took 3.5 years before he was captured. The trial and the ongoing trauma. And it is ongoing trauma. And it sometimes gets forgotten, I feel, at the end of a case where we have the statements outside the court and the police thanking the CPS and relatives expressing their heartache. That heartache does not end. It lasts forever. And now with Tracy Hanson and her son Josh, who was murdered, the man who killed him, Shane O'Brien, got a life sentence with a minimum of 26 years. Now, he may or may not be eligible for parole at the end of those 26 years. But having followed that case, seen the grief of Tracy's daughter, in other words, Josh's sister Brooke, and the other family and the friends, I couldn't help but come to the conclusion that 26 years is simply nowhere near long enough. And I think there is a very well-founded, justified argument to say that in a case like that as well, a whole life tariff would be appropriate.
Now, talking about sentencing, it strikes me as worth segueing into sentencing of people carrying lethal weapons, because this is what's behind all of this, isn't it? Once upon a time, you know, kids have always brawled and had fights. Lord knows teenage boys have out-of-control testosterone and get themselves involved in all sorts of fisticuffs. But it doesn't usually result in someone whipping out a kitchen knife, a zombie knife, you know, whatever, a flick knife, and stabbing another person. And it's very easy, isn't it, to think, well, this is just gangs. This is just, you know, kids who are involved in gangs. They knife each other. But it's not. It's drip feeding into society. You've now got kids you wouldn't expect to carry weapons, who now think they have to carry weapons, or it's being made trendy online, or, you know, in schools. Kids are very impressionable and, you know, run with their peer groups, and one person carries a knife, then everyone carries a knife. And yet, it seems to me two things have happened. One is that, you know, multiple strikes and you're out when you carry a weapon, not you've got a knife on you, that's it, you're in trouble immediately. And two, how are you even going to find people carrying knives when stop and search has become so controversial?
It hasn't drip-fed into wider society, this knife carrying. It has crashed like a tsunami into teenagers, particularly in our cities. And it is deeply worrying because they are fearful. These teenagers are terrified. Innocent, decent kids, many of them, coming from good backgrounds, and when their parents are looking the other way, they are taking a knife from that top drawer in the kitchen and carrying it with them because they are scared. They are, of course, incredibly foolish, naive, and the stupidity of it is some of the stats that we can trust overwhelmingly show that if you take a knife out onto the streets, you are far more likely to become a victim of knife crime yourself. Of course, going on to stop and search, which can be a very effective tool and actually to which there is simply no alternative. You have a clown of a London mayor, Sadiq Khan, vowing to reduce stop and search. I know there are some issues about it. People will argue about the disproportionality of black people being stopped and searched more than white people, for example. There's also a movement to try and strip away from the police the Section 60 power, which allows a senior officer, should there be an outbreak of crime, bloodshed, a very much immediate matter that requires urgent attention, an officer can authorise a Section 60 order, which allows police officers, without any just cause or reason, in other words, to, as they wish, stop and search someone. But it's a rarely used power, and it's important. And you imagine, let me choose a hypothetical set of circumstances. There's an inner London borough plagued by knife crime and bloodshed. A teenager is stabbed, is lying in the street, mortally wounded, being attended to by paramedics and police officers. Word on the street says there's about to be a revenge attack somewhere else in the borough. Other children are carrying knives, machetes. They are going to wreak revenge for what has happened. Who would blame a police officer for instantaneously saying, right, I now impose a Section 60 order. You see anybody on the streets, you can stop and search them. Explain why? Because those officers would be trying to stop further bloodshed. Yeah. And yet you've got the liberal, fluffy, wokerati who think all stop and search is bad, want to strip that power away from police officers. And it's ludicrous.
When I pass through airport security, because I've got a bit of metal in my leg, more often than not, I'm stopped and I'm searched. And I don't think, oh, this is not fair, you think I'm a terrorist. I mean, look, when it comes to offence, confected offence often, and just protecting society and saving lives, there's no argument, is there? It's just absolutely mad. Peter, we've got to break now, but thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for giving my boyfriend a what for if he ever treats me badly.